Shut the door.
Hello! Greetings, business people of Croydon. Welcome to Sussex Innovation Croydon, an innovation centre. We're here today, though, not because of us. We're here because of Barclays, Streeter Marshall, and Bryden Johnson. Now, I'm sure you've heard of all these names. Bryden Johnson, the largest and most longest established accountancy firm in Croydon. Streeter Marshall, same story but with some big solicitors. And of course, Barclays needs no introduction. We have here Chris Evans, who leads the business team there. We have Jackie Wilding, partner at Bryden Johnson, for accounting. And we have Jill Vargason somewhere, partner at Streeter Marshall Solicitors. So great people to talk to about business, but I know a lot of you know them already, and that's how you got the introduction here. Today is actually about the future of Croydon. That can mean many things. Specifically, we have two brilliant speakers for Croydon, and so I guess you're getting two particular angles on what the future of Croydon is. I'm going to say a little bit about what I see for the future, which is a very small little bubble of entrepreneurs doing funky things. But we're going to hear from Tony Letts, you probably know her already. She's Deputy Mayor. She's about to become the Mayor of Croydon in May, I believe. I hope I don't get anything wrong. But it's her second time for her. She's been doing this for a while. And no one knows or loves Croydon as much as she does. So I'm quite excited to hear what she's going to talk about. And it's perfect timing with her starting in May again, because she's going to talk about the vision for Croydon's ongoing growth. Richard Plant is the chairman of Develop Croydon, as well as a partner at Styles, Harold Williams. Williams? That's it. Okay, sorry about that. Harold Styles Williams, there you go, I get to say it this time. Point being that his perspective is slightly different. He sees all these buildings going up, as we all do, but he's got a bird's eye view of all this sort of stuff that's happening, all these deals that are coming together, all these new companies moving in, all these people excited about setting up new projects in Croydon. So that gives him quite an interesting angle. So from him we'll be hearing about what that means, not just what that means full stop, but also what does that mean for Croydon businesses and our ability to sell more and do more funky stuff. So that's really what we're hearing about. Finally, we'll be having some networking and food, which is arguably the most important bit, because it's where we get to talk to each other, and we're all really interesting people. So I'm personally looking forward to that. I've already spoken to some people here, and I've been impressed by the quality of people here, so that's good. It's always exciting when we have an audience who really know their stuff, with a lot to bring. So there will be a little Q&A, so I'm hoping that we can give the people on that panel, unless I'm one of them, a really hard time. So, before we hand over to Tony, I just want to say a little bit about Sussex Innovation Croydon. We call ourselves an incubator. We are part of a network of incubators coming out of the University of Sussex, where there's a large innovation centre there, and we're also moving into Brighton and potentially other places as well. So we're very much southeast. Coming to Croydon was important part of Sussex University's keenness to outreach further into the southeast. It was already working with Croydon College in many capacities, so it kind of made sense from that perspective too. But from our perspective, and by our I mean in particular, Saffron here, because our community manager, myself, Ben Holt, who run the situation here on day to day, and we have members of our support team as well here. We're excited. Our focus is very much Croydon businesses and Croydon entrepreneurism, and seeing that gather pace is really exciting. So just in my position here, we've been welcoming in businesses who are actually not necessarily dedicated to Croydon. So it's thinking, oh, right, well, I could go to about 5 locations and maybe I'll go here or here. And, well, hopefully we've helped persuade them to come to Croydon, but independent of us, they're seeing Croydon as a really exciting place to come and do business and be a part of the community. So I don't think that was the case, that would have happened in the same way even a few years ago. There are other businesses we have which are very much Croydon, and through, they went to school here, they're passionate about Croydon. And I think passion about Croydon has been almost a surprise for me. I've only lived in the borough for about 4 years, and so growing up I had that sort of cliche view of Croydon being a bit of a not of a nice place to go, and going ugh when I look out the train window. That is completely gone, that perspective for me. I've been so excited and impressed by all the lovely stuff we see, the people I meet, and the passion of the people. So I love that. I'll give you a few examples of Croydon future that we see from a kind of business entrepreneur perspective, just because they're interesting stories. So, for example, one of our members, this is at sort of we have levels of excitement and growth, and well, actually, it depends what you find exciting. But I mean, we have companies that are already doing really well and turning over millions. Mostly, we have companies that are starting out and trying to make a go of it, and already on the path to success, but at varying degrees upon that path. One member I thought I'd mention is called Industria, and they're exciting because they're completely transforming the market for international students. This is a huge market worth billions, where you have international students saying, yeah, I'll go to that university, and the universities pay thousands of pounds to agents because these guys are lucrative because they pay much more than domestic students. So it's this big market, very messy, visas, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make anyone else that happens to feel less bad about themselves. So this international market, they're completely revolutionising by making all the right partnerships and infrastructure together with banks, with visa agencies, so they can do the visas, they can do the funding, they can hook up students with universities in a completely different way. Very, very interesting, and they've got millions of pounds of investment to help them scale at a very rapid pace. Then we have companies like the one I was with this morning, AO, which is a completely novel way of solving the expenses problem. So in the past few years we've seen things like Expense Bar and Receipt Bank and all these cool tools that allow you to manage expenses better. They've actually completely gone a step further and said, well look, how about you just change the process entirely, rather than having either corporate credit cards or petty cash or a painful process in the middle of every month submit your expenses. Let's just give people prepaid cards. We can have a simple software system that lets managers throw the money on their cards as and when they need it. And it's a very neat solution which makes the whole thing easier and empowers staff rather than waste their time. So that's a cool one. We have a company that's developed this phenomenal learning support software that really lets you manage all your staff training, all your staff development. If they go on training and learn cool stuff, they can sort of track that back into their development plans. A really useful tool, and they're actively looking for pilot customers. They spent over £100,000 on developing this incredible software, and that sort of thing is a great opportunity for a company that says, oh, actually, yeah, I'd like to get my hands on some really sophisticated software that can help me do more with my HR, with my people development, and either not have to pay for it at all, pay very, very little, or pay in the future when it's all proven and safe. Because that's the kind of partnership we can offer, where companies who are doing really cool stuff are looking to work with innovative local businesses who are up for sort of putting this stuff into practice and becoming early adopters. So as an innovation centre, I guess my message to you is, well, in a way it's threefold. The first thing is, if you want to just come and sniff around because you're nosy and interested, then do. We love it. We love making those connections. Secondly, if you know of people who want, we do still have space in this building for companies that want to be part of that innovation community. And we're looking for businesses that are ambitious, that we can help to grow. But it's really that loose. We're not more finicky than that. We want businesses in here that we can help support, who are doing interesting things that we can help them be more successful. And finally, we have all this lovely conference facilities that, again, we're trying now to be more open to the community rather than just keep it for our members. We've actually reduced the prices that we're putting these out to non-members because we want to encourage people from the wider community to interact with us, use this space for whatever it's useful for. So that's really all I've got to say. Thank you very, very much for coming. And now over to Tony.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben, for that your warm words of introduction. Yes, I have been mayor once before, but when you live as long as I have, I'm as old as I am, and I've served on the council for 32 years. I'm not saying I deserve it. Maybe they're giving it to me to tell me to go. that's probably more like it. But it's great to be here. And look, the sun's shining. And for most of us in the room, we want the sun shining every day, and particularly for those businesses. I have to say, Jackie, a lovely warm welcome from you. But I expected sitting on this chair, I should have had a Manhattan in my hand, and it didn't come. Next time. And I believe we're here today very much because of real partnership working. We've already heard that the people who have put together today are indeed all local companies, and I'm not suggesting that Jackie's old, but very old companies and well-established companies have been here for over 100+ years. Yes, and Industria and Marshall equally have been there for that long, and of course Barclays Bank's been there forever, hasn't it? I would say. But it is splendid to be here. I haven't heard the latest from Mippen last week, but I'm sure I did actually say to my lovely Richard Plant here, I did actually say to him, did you have a good time? He says, very, very busy. And I said, yes, drinking all that champagne. He said, no, it was rosé actually. So I'm sure over the rosé they also did lots and lots of showcasing and showing off the dramatic changes that we have here in Croydon and the buzz there is about the place. But it's not just here. This year we've had Mayor Wayne Trackers-Lawler. He's such a popular mayor, everybody wants him. So he gets invited all over the place, but he can't be in two places at once. So I get to go to places maybe that he'd like to go to. We have a rule that if he accepts a job, we call them, then he doesn't sort of say, I can't go and go to the better one. So I've actually gone to quite a lot of jobs in London, and everybody I speak to there, whether it's in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, whether it's in City Hall, or wherever it is in London, people say to me, how's it being done in Croydon? And I do talk about the partnership working, I do talk about Develop Croydon, but I talk about it's our time. It really is our time, and we've actually galvanised, and we've got people together. And it's not a talking shop. A real action shop, and that's the difference, because for years and years and years we've talked about it. I'm old enough to remember we were going to have an arena across the road, and it didn't happen. And we've actually delivered. We are delivering now, and that is fantastic. And we are going through this period of regeneration. I burst with pride, as I say, when I meet other people, and I really want to talk about it. And because the big thing that the mayor's constantly asks, and indeed myself, will Westfield Hammerson happen? Yes, it will happen. I think it's going to planning in April, and I'm not on planning, but I think it's going to planning in April, and yes, it will. And the interesting thing is that retail has changed. So in fact, the Westfield Hammerson's centre will be even more exciting than originally planned, because there are more boutique businesses as well as high street names wanting to be there. But they don't need quite so much space, because a lot of us buy on, you click and it's delivered to your home, or you can go and collect it. But I don't read the New York Times every day, but I did happen to read it in my daughter's home on Sunday, and she brought it back having been on business in America. And it says that retail shopping is the new leisure. So I'm told that it's rekindling. People are fed up getting parcels or having to go to collect them and having them redelivered. So that's a very positive thing for Croydon. And I was so pleased that the New York Times had something other than Trump in it as well, because we don't really want to talk about it. But I want to talk about saying thank you very much to all those developers and all of you who are involved with developers, who stuck with us through the lean times. And there were difficult times, and I mean, Richard will know chapter and verse about those difficult times, and people hung on and actually believed in Croydon, and I'm so glad that it's become such a success for them. And not just creating homes, but also creating new communities. Croydon's very, very different, and because it's not just where people come to do business and go away at the end of the day. They don't. They're going to be living here. They're going to be eating in Box Park. And I've taken my grandchildren there, and I noticed I wasn't just the only granny there. There were other grandparents there with their grandchildren, so it goes right across the ages. But we have become a tech hub. And I want to tell you a little story. A year before the last local elections, I had a group of people in a room in the town hall, and I wanted to talk about technology in the future. And Johnny Rose was there from Croydon Tech City, and he said, it'll never happen, you'll never get a tech hub in Croydon. We haven't got one, we've got two. So that's fantastic, it has happened, but you have to believe in what you were saying, and I'm so proud that the council has kept its promise to deliver the Tomorrow Hub. And of course, there's this hub, and I knew about the work through sitting on Coastal Capital Board, the excellent work you were doing and continue to do, and to support and grow businesses. So it's amazing, it's fantastic. I said about Box Park. I didn't quite believe Roger Wade when I first met him. Then when I heard he had an Irish mother, I come from Ireland, I thought, yeah, he's going to be a great success. And he is, and it's fantastic. But what I would like him to do is to actually I would like to have seen some small niche retail shops there. They haven't happened, and however, maybe one day. The local authority now is working very much about creating the centre of Croydon. Fairfield Halls will reopen, and it will be very different, and it will be very much the cultural hub of the borough, really, and beyond. I mean, the iconic Fairfield Halls, you can't imagine that ever closing, and it has closed, but it will open, and in very much fit for this 21st century and the modern Croydon that we'll have. And I'm sure that you've heard from Richard and others in the room that we're going to have 9,000 staff come into Croydon from the government, 3,000 across the road, and another 6,000 coming between now and 2019 from the Home Office, Border Controller coming to Croydon. I recently had a long conversation with Sir John Sorrell, who is the chairman, or he's a CB, he's chairman of the London School of Fashion, and I was talking to him about Croydon College and fashion and design, and I said to him, I want you to come down to Croydon and actually open an annex or a branch of your college in Croydon, because if you go along to Croydon College, we have wonderful, wonderful young designers and creators of fashion. And I want us to create, we've had Kate Moss, but she's never designed anything. She has just worn it. I want people to design. I want Croydon people to be able to show their designs all over the world. And that's really what I want to happen. So I'm hoping that somebody like Richard, when he has a Develop Croydon event, or you have another event, that we actually invite Sir John Sorrell down to Croydon and to talk about the possibilities, and they could design them here, couldn't they? Send them somewhere else. I don't know, but I really want that to happen, because I've seen young people in Croydon College, and they have to go elsewhere to create their own businesses if that's what they want. I want them to stay in Croydon and I want them to deliver. I also want us to concentrate a little more than we currently do on Croydon Historic Town. And I'm sure you are aware that, I wasn't around then, I know I'm old, but I wasn't around then, that in Tudor times, Elizabeth I used to come down every summer for 6 weeks. She used to come down the River Thames in her barges. She brought 200 courtiers with her, but she'd come down the Thames and then join the River Wandle, which is now underground, but those it was up and it flew past the Minster. It flowed past the Minster into Morden. But she used to come down and her barges would be parked there and she'd go and spend 6 weeks in the old palace where the school is now. And of course John Whitgift, her favourite Archbishop, lived in the hospital, which is now the almshouse, known as the almshouses. And she used to come up the cinder path, which we now call Church Street, with some of her courtiers. And there used to be these pop-up shops, they weren't called pop-up shops then, but these pop-up shops would appear for the 6 to 9 weeks that she was here. So new businesses were started while she was here. But I would love that Church Road now called Elizabeth I Walk, because I think it's very important we actually show that we have a great heritage. I could go on forever and a day about the Whitgift Foundation, but I promise I won't. That's not what I'm here for today. But we do have history. So I think history, art, culture, technology, business, we've got everything going for us. And I'm so, so proud to have seen it for myself and for its happening. And, but I also do want to pay tribute to the work that Richard has done. He's heard me say this before, and I don't want to embarrass him. But he's not always had it easy with the Develop Croydon Forum, but he also has stuck with it, and he's achieved so much. And I won't name the business, but I was recently, well, a couple of months ago, I was talking to a Croydon business, and I said, have you actually met with Richard Planton? Oh, I'm a member of Develop Croydon, and I went to Nippon last year, and I got £6 million worth of business out of it. I'm going to double that this year. That's what we want. More business in Croydon, more jobs in Croydon, and it's fantastic to be here. Thank you very much.
Super. Thanks very much, Tony. Right, can everybody? Can everybody hear at the back? Is that okay? All right, Tim. Brilliant. So my name's Richard Plant, as you've obviously already heard. I'm a partner at Styles Harold Williams, and as we've been going on about dates, Styles were here in 1798 in Croydon, and we've been moving around the town ever since to make way for various developments. So I think we were at 80 High Street and had to move to make way for the flyover. We were at Wetton House and had to move in 1973 to make way for Ruskin Square. Obviously a bit early on that one. And now we're at 69 Park Lane, looking over the developments that are happening. I'm a passionate supporter of Croydon, and I've been here for about 22 years. As far as Styles is concerned, I run this office, but I run the development side of things. So we do the planning and development consultancy, buying, selling development sites and so on. So I've been involved in a lot of the permitted development, a lot of the residential development and some of the offices around the town. Also, in addition to Styles, I'm chairman of Develop Croydon. Now, in 2011, about 8 businesses sat around the table and said, look, Croydon's going absolutely nowhere. April 2011, depths of the recession. What are we going to do to try and convince people that there is a market here that needs to be supported, and we do need to get on and promote Croydon as somewhere to invest, live, work, etc. In London. Fortunately, the other people around the table were people like Berkeley Homes, Barratt Homes, Mentor, Stanhope Schroders, all the people with a key involvement in the town. And I think it was their collective sort of weight that they brought to the initiative that has kind of made it so successful. 4 years later, so 2 years ago, we got up to about 60 members. You can see from some of the logos that you've got sort of world-renowned brands, you've got national developers, and you've got a complete mix, you know, from the Whitgift Foundation to Westfield, from you know, places for people to the council. You know, we've got a broad sector, housing associations as well, you know, legal and general, and it's really the strength of the group that has made it work so well. Now, obviously, I'm here to try and bring you up to date over the last 2 years what's happened. So I'm going to do a little bit about the office market, major developments, industrial, retail, residential, and I think crucially, just the general sort of profile of Croydon, which Tony alluded to, which it was all very well us promoting Croydon as a place to invest, a place to make money, but it's this underlying feeling that has been helped by, you know, the culture, the arts side, which is really now helping, you know, push the whole thing along at a much better rate, and the tech side as well. So this is a map that Develop Croydon produced, which basically has all of the major development sites on it. I mean, without going into any particular detail, what you can see is it's almost every building. And I think that's where we've got to over the last 2 years. We've got to the point now where you walk along and you know, the bits that haven't been redeveloped are starting to stand out. And the sites that are starting, the sites that are planned, you know, it's really becoming comprehensive across the different uses, use types, from residential and offices particularly. But also, you know, we're still yet to have the big finale, which is obviously Westfield. Now, talking about culture, we've also started to promote that a bit more. So at a time when Fairfield has shut, awaiting or undergoing its refurbishment, actually the cultural offering elsewhere in Croydon is starting to gather a pace. And that includes, you know, the Rise Gallery, the murals and things like that, which all start to just give the overall effect that something's actually happening. And the cultural quarter. Obviously, Fairfield Halls had been there since the 60s. It's now hoarded, obviously called the cultural quarter, which is part of regeneration, really. Everything seems to become a quarter and has some hoardings with some nice colours on. But behind the scenes, and I can see it from my office, looking down from the 7th floor, you know, there's activity going on, and that will take approximately 2 years. Now, for some reason, the slide's not quite lined up properly, but the bit that's missing off is obviously there's a substantial number of residential units, and the master plan has now spread out to include Croydon College. So that whole sector is planned to be redeveloped. The first phase, obviously, the halls itself and some housing and College Green, but that moves on to renew the college and include further residential development. There's also £14.2 million worth of funding from Coast Capital LEP going into that. Now, back onto the sort of broader stage, just on the office side. Now, the residential took off first, and it was very easy to see that the permitted development and the like, you know, was a real thrust of activity, thousands of units, and we'll come on to that. But everybody thought, well, the office sector is being rather left behind, but not really. You know, the biggest letting, 184,000 square foot to HMRC, you know, is now just outside the window there by the bridge. You know, that wasn't there 2 years ago. That's at £33.75 a square foot. You know, really, really good rent. I can't remember the last letting of anything like that. You know, the last new building was only 100,000 square foot, which interestingly was let in 2014 for only £22.50. So from 14 to 2.25 years later, you go from 2250 to 3375. I mean, that is a massive, massive hike. EDF Global HQ has come down to Interchange at West Croydon. Interchange, 180,000 square foot. I think there's 50 left now. We've now got Superdrug, which, to be fair, were always a sort of Croydon company. They came from Beddington, which is not a million miles away. But they've taken number 8 Bedford Park, which is sort of behind the Vista scheme there, the flats, as their sort of main headquarters. And I suppose on a similar theme, we've got Body Shop as well. So, you know, Croydon traditionally known for the insurance industry, the construction industry and so on. Now it's beauty products as well. So, so obviously what does the new headline figures look like? I've sort of alluded to those already. And I think this gives rise, you know, part of this talk was really about what does this mean for some of the businesses in Croydon. And obviously, unfortunately, it does mean there's going to be a significant increase in costs over the next period to the next rent reviews and so on. And unfortunately, that's mirrored with rates as well. But what you're paying for is massively improving as well. Now, Croydon was always renowned for having just under 9 million square foot of office. About 3.5 was vacant. That's all gone now. You know, it's all been PD'd, or it's the Whitgift blocks above Westfield Hammerson, which will be demolished. You know, there's now only, you know, a couple of 100,000 square foot on the market in central Croydon, which is actually a real problem. It'll cause the rent to go up again, and obviously it will hopefully promote someone to actually build more space. I mean, it's interesting, you know, you look at buildings, buildings like this one, and what the most common Croydon office letting is about 4,000 to 10,000 square feet, and obviously what's being built at Ruskin Square, they're all a couple of hundred. So what we need to do is we need to find more small space for the people that are coming out of the hubs, the incubator centres like this. You know, where do they go? And that's the pressure that'll be next. So just while we're on Ruskin Square, obviously 2 years ago, that big block there, Vista, that wasn't there. Not only is it now there, but it's pretty much fully occupied really. There's relatively few flats left, and they've been selling at about £590 a square foot, which is a significant hike, and I'll come back to resi values later. Interchange, I mentioned. You know, at the time when they started refurbishing that, it was like, oh, you know, it's kind of by West Croydon Station. Who's going to want to go all the way up there? But you know, you can now see, again, you can see Saffron Square sticking out, which is only just in front of Interchange. Suddenly, with the bus station being refurbished up there, you know, with the road improvements, the public realm, you know, it's no longer a backwater. And actually, like I said, you know, lots of new people. Carillion are in there, EDF. I think Siemens have got a bit of space there, so lots of new occupiers and not much left. This is the point of this slide really. This is Silicon roundabout or whatever in Shoreditch, but the point was to illustrate the fact that the tech hubs are arriving, and obviously of particular note, this particular building. You might be able to help me out here slightly, but we've obviously got Natterbox. Give me some more occupiers in this building. Dot Mailer. Smarter. HotGen. Obviously the Innovation Centre itself. All tech companies that have come to this sort of space. So this building is starting to become a beacon for that sort of thing, which you know is I mean, we never thought would happen really, but you know, very successful, and an iconic building owned by Hermes. And I mean, they must be incredibly happy because their potential for rental growth has gone massively up since they've owned it. they would have bought it when you'd have been struggling to get to £20 a square foot in this building. And then obviously we come on to retail now. In advance of the big finale, the Croydon Partnership, Westfield Hampton, we've had Box Park. And initially I was slightly cynical, but I had to keep very quiet because we were doing the planning for Box Park, so I couldn't possibly criticise it. But I thought, really, a load of containers, you know, how on earth is that actually going to work? And now you find it appeals to a very broad range age group, you know, from young teenagers, sort of pre-drinking, just looking for somewhere to meet, drink smoothies and the like, right through to people with their grandchildren, all sorts of music and entertainment. That's the box bar and some of the food. And you notice the branding springing up, you know, buses are branded Box Park, the turnstile things into the station at Box Park, even the cash points at Box Park outside. And it was all Roger's idea. And he said, we're trying to bring something we consider revolutionary. Well, obviously they had done one before. He said, we hope it will bring world class to Croydon. And the aim was to create a destination that could fit into any major city in the world, effectively. And I think, you know, it really, really has worked. One of many things that has. And it's promoting, we pop this up, promoting Tronks, you know, the Croydon beer. We took 600 bottles of this to Mippin, just to, you know, push back against the rosé and the champagne of the French, and very successful. And they went in about an hour. It was quite amazing. So after Box Park, Tony alluded to the fact that Westfield, Hammerson, Croydon Partnership should get consent, and it's this month, and it's just a question of whether it's before or after Easter. So what would that be? The 6th of April? Is that the Thursday before Easter?
I think so.
Something like that. So hopefully the 6th, if not the Thursday afterwards. But you know, it is perilously close. If that happens, or when that happens, they will be starting construction probably this time or slightly later than this time next year. So you've got one more Christmas to do your Christmas shopping in the Whitgift Centre, and then it's goodbye for good. I think what that will do in Croydon is it's actually £1.5 billion worth of investment. It's millions, 2 million square foot of development, and it's probably more than that now. There's 1,000 flats planned for on top. And it just resolves numerous of the problems that Croydon have had. It's the catalyst to resolve 5 ways. Actually, one thing I know people always ask, they go, where are people going to park? And I find that slightly tedious as someone that walks in and out and uses the bus. But there's actually 3,000 spaces coming in Westfield. So that hopefully will go some way to answer that question. Now I want to just come on to industrial next. We always focus a lot on Croydon Town Centre, but actually there's something like 14 million square foot of retail warehousing and industrial boxes on the Purley Way, which is one of the unique things, you know, that Kingston, that Bromley, you know, that nowhere else has that quantity of additional space to, you know, they still make things out there, you know, and as well as retailing and distribution. But we're the distribution hub, you know, for a lot of South London, for whether it's DHL, you know, even the sort of diner rod people for Thames Water. The whole of South London are based out of sheds on the Purley Way. So you've got a lot of employment. But the problem is, it's 96.25% occupied. So there's barely anything left. There's currently no speculative industrial development taking place. So we're in desperate need of more industrial space out on the Purley Way. And unless we have that, obviously values will increase, but you know, potentially we'd lose employment. So we desperately need new industrial development. That's my industrial colleague there. I mean, just, you know, this is some of the stock. For the industrial market, although we talk about Croydon, we kind of include Mitcham, and obviously you go over the border towards Beddington, and technically you're in Sutton, but we lump it all together as one market. And basically everything is going. Residential PD, so permitted development, so this is responsible for about 3,500 flats produced in very, very quick order. Now when I came here last time, or when I did this talk last time, most of it was sort of, you know, it was planned, they got their consent, they hadn't really started. And now, you know, wherever you look, out the window, I was looking for Carolyn House, but you know, everything is starting, and it's the sheer numbers, and not only is it starting, it's also actually now being occupied. So generally, in the past 2 years, house prices in London across the south have probably gone up by about 25%. In Croydon, I think it's actually a lot more than that. Certainly, I think over 4 years, you're looking at north of 50% for the average. You know, the average two-bed 1970s, late 60s, early 70s flat. You could get a two-bed for about 175 4 years ago. If you go and try and buy that now, you'll be at 340, 350, which is a colossal uplift. And they're all going, because the other thing everybody says is, with all these thousands of units, where do the people come from, and how long will demand go for? Well, at the moment, apparently flats sell the third quickest in the UK in terms of area. Now obviously that's to do with our communications, it's to do with the height of Croydon, but it's fundamentally it's demand in London. So 3,500 units, pretty much all delivered. Which is taking out 1.75 million square feet from the office market, which obviously you have to add on top of that the ones that are actually just demolished, because that's just conversion. But you've got Delta Point, very nearly finished. That one's actually a mistake. That's the site opposite East Croydon, which is in solicitors' hands again, apparently to an Irish developer. St Anne's House, it's actually north of 200 now, but they are all 24 metre squared sort of bed sits. And I asked if I could go and see one, and they said no, they're all full, at about £800 a month, which for 24 metres is insane, really. It's a huge price. Impact House, hopefully about to get planning for the top bits, because only the bottom areas could be PD'd, because the top bits were never ever actually used as an office. Emerald House is quite an interesting one. It's done now and occupied. Mark Blackman sold that. Mark Blackman bought that for about 3.5 million. Probably 2.5, 3 years ago. He sold it after 3 months for 10. And then the people that have done the development bought it for 19. So just in terms of how those appraisals have gone up, it's just phenomenal. These are done, nearly finished. Exchange Court, on Bedford Park, done. 5 Bedford Park, done, ready to go now. St George's House, Nestle Tower, a lot of people have asked about that today. It was actually in the Croydon Advertiser, but Legal & General sold the Nestle Tower to Delancey, and Delancey have sold that whole block from High Street, Park Street, Park Lane and Catherine Street to Chinese developers for about 60 million. So that hopefully will now start to move forward, because that probably is the last big mass of redundant ageing property that hasn't really been put to good use. And it's master planned. Obviously, St George's Tower has a consent for resi conversion. Various other plans. The council's own Taverner House, which obviously has been the site of numerous artworks around the hoardings over recent years. That's now just gone back into planning, increasing from 420 units to 520, and will be a company called Hub in conjunction with the council's own Brick by Brick. Morello Tower, right outside the window, that wouldn't have been there 2 years ago. The first section building up to the big tower that's going to be on the end. They're selling well. They're about 590, 595 a square foot again, and again selling with no problems at all. The asking prices in Croydon just continue to go up. Unfortunately, the only graph I could find is a year out of date, but trust me, it's gone up further than that. So it's probably up to 350 at the moment. And then this was just back to the, all of this development is great, and I think the focus on design has definitely helped. But just the general feel around Croydon, and it's quite difficult to put your finger on it, but whether you go into the other tech hub tomorrow, and you just see the different sorts of people walking around Croydon, a lot of younger people, a lot of the people that have moved into these permitted developments, are younger. They're people who weren't in Croydon before, and it's a changing feel, really. Culture, that is actually a piece of artwork that was hanging in the Rise Gallery that I thought was quite interesting. But you've got basically pictures with fluorescent tube writing on top. It's well worth a look. That's Donald Trump in a German uniform with Captain America. It's quite interesting. I mean, who would put an art gallery in St George's Walk? And I walked in there, and he said, "Do you want to see a Damien Hirst?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, okay." And we looked at a picture of a butterfly on the wall, and he said, "That's worth £15 million." Well, no idea if he's telling the truth or not, but it's quite amazing that can hang in St George's Arcade in Croydon. And that brings us on to our very own Stormzy in Box Park and all this grime stuff, which, again, I don't really pretend to understand. I did see him in IKEA buying a rug once. And then on to the future. So what we've got to look forward to next is the cultural quarter. Is actual. I want to see the outside of the Fairfield Hall start to see some changes, and looking forward to that. We've obviously got our planning consent of Westfield. So with all of this happening, and yet the really big development that supposedly kick-started the whole thing, is still yet to be seen, is still distant on the horizon. And in early meetings at Develop Croydon, Steve Human, the development director, said, "You can't leave it all up to us. All you other developers and all you other people have got to get your acts together and get on with your stuff." And now everybody turns around to him and goes, "Well, look out the window, look what's happened. It's time you got cracking as well." And I think there have been delays, probably a couple of years worth, I would have thought, but we really are nearly there now. So what does that mean for businesses in Croydon? Well, unfortunately, I think it does mean rising costs, but I think it means more employment as well. All that residential, all these young people moving into Croydon, are available. In the past, one of the things that was really difficult for my business was recruiting, and we'd recruit, and then next thing you know, as soon as they got to be any good, they'd disappear off to Savills or somebody in London. Very annoying. The more people that we have living in Croydon, the better, and the more people I think will end up staying in Croydon, not just because of the train strikes, but just because they want to, and because it's an enjoyable place to work. It's great to go and have lunch in Box Park, etc., and Westfield in the future. And as far as the rent and rates are concerned, I've got lots of colleagues, many of whom do rent reviews and do their best to act for the tenants, and quite a few do rates. And I think it's worth noting that the rates bills, we're in a changing landscape. So retail parades that were really, really good will go downhill as the entrances to Westfield change and bring in different pedestrian flows. Chris Evans was saying that their office at Corinthian House used to be a little backwater in Dingle Road that no one really walked past. Suddenly the bridge is open and it's centre of the universe, and that will be the main route into Box Park. The at-grade crossings over Wellesley Road as well will readjust the pedestrian flows into places that we haven't seen yet. And that, together with the disruption through construction, is a good opportunity to make an appeal against your rates. So, finally, obviously, we're going to have a few questions. I think before we do, I'd like to ask you guys a question, really, in that as the business people of Croydon, Develop Croydon, this initiative, this massive redevelopment, has sort of come along. We've got to a certain point now, and there are those that are thinking, well, you've done it now, you can pack up, we can save our couple of grand a year, and we can wait and enjoy the fruits of our labour and just sit back and wait for Westfield to open. But have we really finished? I would suggest the answer is probably no. But what does everybody else want to see happen? What are the problems and the things that people should be focusing on into the future? Because Develop Croydon is effectively a voice back to the council about what we want to see, bits of regeneration we want, bits of road improvements, bits of public realm improvements. And at the end of the day, the businesses, unless you live here as well, don't get a vote, don't get a voice. So we can be the recipient of those comments, and we can promote that as not so much a lobbying group, but just a voice, just a connection to the council. Jonah Greening, etc., will turn up at our things and speak there. Various councillors for planning, housing, regeneration, economics, etc., will come along. So we can provide that ability to talk to the council. But is everybody perfectly happy? Does everybody think all the development's done?
No, the question here, I heard on the grapevine that since Brexit, that phase 2 of Russell Square might well be not in doubt, but delayed, or there's some investment issues there.
Of the residential
of the next phase, because obviously that's phase 1.
Of the office?
Yeah.
So of the office, HMRC have an option, or the government property department have an option to expand into that. So I assume they'll be quite bold to start before they know the outcome of that. But I think they are definitely talking about it. So I don't think it's to do with Brexit, that particular one.
Government departments, some years back, when Charlie Faulkner was Secretary of State for Industria, I think, a chap that many of you may know, who lives in Croydon, should I name him? Maybe I shouldn't. Actually looked at all of the government buildings, and a lot of them were sold at that time, and they leased buildings for their officers and their staff. And therefore, those leases have now come to an end, or coming to an end, or they're not fit for purpose, the offices. That's why they want to move to Croydon. And the connections between Victoria or West Croydon, between London Bridge. So I've been in a room where I've heard conversations, so I have to tell you it will happen.
Hopefully it will. Yes.
As a lifelong Croydonian, I think it's amazing. I've cycled through most days and see these things started. It's really inspiring, and but as a business owner, as a medium-sized business owner, permitted developments, I do have slight concerns about the office space, and you cited escalating rental prices as being very positive for the owners of the buildings, but as a business kind of environment, the great reduction in the amount of office space that's been lost to residential. Are there plans? Obviously, Westfield's coming with retail, and you mentioned the Chinese owners have bought a Nestle building around there in George's Walk. is there going to be a focus on bringing more office space to try and curb that increase in rental prices? Because otherwise, it's great if the government and large companies come in, but small business and medium business is really going to struggle, I think.
I mean, I know what you mean about positive for whom, and certainly, our rent review is under discussion at the moment, so we feel it personally as well as arguing on the other side. Until this last little movement in rent, so even as late as probably 15, if not early 16, the record office rent in Croydon was set in Sir Christopher Wren Yard in 1991 at £25 a square foot, and it hadn't been beaten, in all that time, and that resulted in pretty much no new office. We had Renaissance, and before that we had Metro Point, and I think before that would be the building that HSBC are in. So when rental levels are that low, you don't get any regeneration, you don't get any new space. So we basically stayed in old offices that are gradually becoming less and less suitable for occupation, less economic to run and all that kind of thing. That resulted in this. So we were always, when it eventually went, it was always going to be a big jump, because it's not just 2 years, it's going over 30 or whatever that is. So but up to a point, it is a good thing that we pay the right level for where we are. Why should we have been miles less than Red Hill, for goodness sake? That doesn't make any sense. But is there plans to build? I mean, I think the concern I would have is that there aren't plans to build small space, and that's back to we do a schedule of all the office lettings every year, and if you look at the take up, your average, like I say, is between about 4 to 10,000 square foot, which is about 40 to 100 people. And that is a typical Croydon company, and we haven't provided them much else to go in. And new build office developments, they're all 200,000 square foot, and they want to let it to one occupier, and that is a problem. I hope, or you could foresee, perhaps a big company, AIG, someone like that, move into one of the new ones. Or Mott MacDonald get together and go in one of the new ones, and that releases a load of others. They're in 3 buildings, Mott's at the moment, and now there's an article for direction that basically stops permitted development in the whole of the town centre. So could that have come in a bit earlier? Possibly, but we needed to get rid of a lot of. It's better that it's occupied than empty. It's more productive. So I think there is a problem. It's very, very difficult to find the sort of space that you guys probably all occupy.
So Richard, just to add to that, what we've seen, so I remember sitting in the council nearly 10 years ago, and the biggest driver then was the amount of people that came in from Purley and Caterham came through Croydon, not to London. And at that time it's like, how do we sort of stop the train in Croydon so everyone gets off the works, and then when they get off the train then they'll go and spend money, etc. So we've kind of got to that point now, I think, where that's happening. I think what we're seeing from our SME market on the back of that is people are slightly moving further out, which is okay. So I think we're going to see more, for example, in Purley. There's a lot of work going on in Purley, and there's some developments coming in Purley, and I think that's purely because it's getting so busy here, and there is increasingly a lack of smaller office space, and I think it's just spreading out a little bit more, which is the bad thing. And I think we have seen a bit of a flight in the SME market. So I'll give you a typical business of ours, and maybe a small care home, somebody that's got a Victorian property in St. Doran, for example, where the property a decade ago was pretty cheap, so they would buy that and run it as a small care home. Now they're thinking, blimey, that's a good residential opportunity, so they might be selling the property there and then purchasing something slightly further out. Now, I'm not 50 miles out, but they might suddenly go down past South Croydon or towards Purley or out slightly more towards Sutton. So it's changing, but I think if something didn't happen in Croydon, it was only going in one direction.
So, but what what can be done to encourage people to provide these smaller office spaces. Otherwise, we're all going to be hiking it off to Purley, Red Hill and everywhere else. We won't see the benefits of what's going on because we won't be able to afford to be here, or there won't be the space that we need for the, you're talking about 40 to 100 people. There must be an awful lot of businesses in Croydon that have an awful lot less than that.
Yeah.
And I suspect the majority of the people here might be in that position. So
Yeah.
what's the carrot to offer to people, developers to provide that sort of space? I understand what you say about freeing up the existing buildings by people moving into the newer buildings, and possibly that, becoming that. But
I just wanted to say 61% of the businesses, the small and medium-sized businesses in Croydon have less than 10 staff. That's 61%.
That's a big percentage.
And that's from the Federation of Small Businesses. That's their figure for Croydon.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there is a policy to encourage it at the moment, but it's buildings like this, like AMP House, that are now full, pretty much, and we'll have to find more of them. And they do exist.
Is how?
Well, ultimately, the market will fill the demand, won't they? So, I mean, I know, for instance, Craig Marks, whose mentor, who's doing Morello, is now thinking, when he gets right round to the last bit of resi, maybe he should do it as a little office block. And he's particularly talking about some collective working type environment, a bit like Tomorrow perhaps, but where smaller companies can fit in. So it will happen, but obviously for Schroders, they want one lease to a blue chip government, like the tax man. It's never going to go away, is it?
Yeah.
so that's the aim.
Right, great. Hi, I just want to follow the theme of portability. I don't want to keep this hard topic.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Anne Chief Executive of a charity business, and we work with homeless individuals. What I'm keen, I think this is fantastic. What I'm keen to understand is some of the measures that may be in terms of employment, in terms of residential, that increasing in residential prices. We talked about attracting younger generations, which is fantastic. How are we going to keep our Croydon young people here working for us? See that Taberner House is 40% of the population. Are there other thoughts around schemes and measures for employability and housing for all young people?
Is that more your realm?
Well, I just wanted to say, the first thing I wanted to say, and I will come back to you, the first thing I wanted to say is that the lovely Simon Bird from Dot Mailer, now when he left let his mum use her dining table back again, he actually moved into one room above a restaurant in South Croydon and started his office there with 2 colleagues. So, I mean, I do think we have to look at alternative spaces for small businesses. I also think that we need to perhaps talk to some of Richard's colleagues and the foundation and talk about some space that the Wycliffe Foundation may have. Again, to let that to smaller groups of people, because if you look at the aims and purposes, it's all about helping people to educate, grow and develop, and I would have thought a new business, small business, would actually meet that criteria very well. And sorry, your point, Anne, was?
It's about affordability and keeping our young people employed and housed in Croydon
Yeah.
with rising prices. It's about affordable rents, affordable accommodation for
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah. Well, in actual fact, about a month ago, no, it was just after Christmas, more than that, I had a meeting with Charlie Faulkner, who is the chairman of Amicus Horizon, and we were having that discussion, and we were talking about shared ownership, and we were talking about the fact it's great that teachers, police officers and others can be part of it, but we really need to look at those who are on perhaps basic pay, and how do they get a foot on their ladder. Now, he was going to talk to government ministers. I don't know what transpired from that. But, you know, he is in the House of Lords, he does have influence, and maybe I should go back to him. Because I do think we need You know, maybe they pay 90% in rent, in affordable rent, and 10% in a mortgage. I don't know, but that was what I asked him for, to look at and consider, so that young people. I've got a granddaughter who's just started teaching, and she's still at home, and she's going to be at home for a long, long time. I've got a young man who's in his 5th year of medicine. It's going to be years before he can afford to rent anywhere. So it's, and indeed your clients, where do they move on to? So I understand the question. It is, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
My name's Sean Taylor, and I'm an activist with the residents in Norbury, and work on the local economy with Trent Human Council. We're beginning to put our fingers on one of the problems with Croydon, and that is that both of you have given a rosy picture of what is happening, but there is a downside. There are different ways of interpreting what is happening. I won't go into detail because I've written extensively on it, as others. But, I mean, the contradiction, for instance, growing social deprivation, we have a growing homelessness crisis, and 3 of the office blocks that Richard showed on the screen that were turned into accommodation, having to be leased by the council to house homeless families because of the total inadequacy of the cost of bed and breakfast. Now, I'm not knocking what that is, but that kind of encapsulates one of the contradictions. The other problem with all this fast growth and development, whether one likes it or not, is the council has identified a massive shortage of money for the infrastructure requirements that these developments need. And that we're going to have a real problem in the town centre if the infrastructure stuff is not funded. Where's that coming from? And thirdly, one thing I think a lot of critics, particularly on trade union side, and some local residents associations, will share Richard's concern about the loss of employment. The TUC did make representations to the council in 2004 about the loss of employment opportunities.
Can I start answering, because I won't remember the question otherwise.
I wonder if when the local plan hearing happens, will develop Croydon try and use that hearing as an opportunity to stress the spectrum that the local plan needs toughening up to protect employment sites and still.
Well, I think that's already done with the restriction on permitted development in the town centre. But just on that point, I wasn't saying that I was worried about employment reducing so much, because I think Westfield is supposedly going to have 5,000 new jobs, and HMRC or the government in general is similar. So there's lots and lots of jobs being recreated. Or created, sorry, and same with the tech hub, same with the new businesses moving in. It's more capitalising and moving that even further forward by making sure that the existing businesses are looked after as well. And what else would say that we have employment? Oh, infrastructure. I mean, the infrastructure, I would slightly counter that in that lots and lots of money has been spent on the station. You know, that new bridge is infrastructure. That has made a massive difference to the way the station works. As you walk in here, you nearly trip over the new bus stop thing being constructed. We've got a new bus station at West Croydon. Wellesley Road's about to shut for a number of weeks while that work's all dealt with, and while the tram is rearranged there. You've got a new tram loop coming in Dingwall Road, Lansdowne Road. You've got works at Five Ways. You've already had public realm, you know, from my office at that end of Park Lane, you know, coming up until it turns into Wellesley Road and moving on. So tram, buses, trains, what other pavements. So we've had a lot of infrastructure already. So I think that is coming in advance of some of the development. I mean, it's quite a struggle to find bits that have been missed. Although I guess it is always the case that increased traffic will ultimately be a problem. But I think that we actually in Croydon, the public transport is as good as it's ever been, as long as we don't have the strikes, which are an absolute nightmare. But strikes apart, everything else has been going really well. You know, the tram is expanding, there's more trams, more trains, and the buses are being resolved as well. So I think actually, whether it's the council, well, it is the council, it's TfL, Network Rail, etc., are all doing their part. You know, largely in advance of some of the bigger schemes, and certainly the Westfield pushes that along. And I don't know exactly, but I would go so far as to say one of the delays to Westfield has no doubt been the negotiation of the Section 106 agreement and some of the contributions for some of this work. So I think it is being thought about.
It has, Sean, and I mean, you know my views about our district centres. I think we need to use them more, and I think as time goes on, you've got empty shops, and I named the Co-op for one in Norbury, where you're a local champion, and why doesn't that become offices for local businesses or local people? And we've talked about this before. We've talked maybe about a tech hub moving there, but I think we have to look outside Croydon, the centre of Croydon as well. And I think our district centres. I'm so proud of Purley bid. You know, they're doing it for themselves now. And I remember when they were applying for bid status, I went to every business in Purley Town Centre saying what advantages would be, and there was a huge yes vote, and they're developing and growing, and as I say, doing it for themselves.
And Coulston as well.
Yeah,
And Coulston.
And I also went to an event in South Norwood the other day where there's a big community there coming together and really making a difference there as well. So it's really good to see.
There's two hands at the same time as Sean. Do you have these two questions?
Let's go for some quick questions.
There's two questions. The first one is, as a young person from Fulton Heath, there's a lot of empty buildings. You talk about culture. Nothing is being done to develop the culture outside of Central Croydon. And from hearing stuff today, it doesn't sound like anything planned either. How are you engaging with that audience, and what's being done about it?
I think that's a good question. I think Tony will have something to say, but it is true that initially the focus was on the centre, you know, getting Croydon going in the middle, and I think that is. I'd kind of hoped that might have been when I was saying, you know, what do people think we need to do next? I think the district centres are next, and I think, you know, South Norwood, Upper Norwood, Norbury, Thornton Heath, all of those have got a lot going for them. They've all got brilliant transport links. They've actually got quite nice housing stock, you know, quite a lot of Victorian housing stock that could do with upgrading. And the wave of gentrification, if you like, has come down from Brixton, Streatham, Balham, and it just kind of stopped, and it always has stopped at Thornton Heath. And maybe this time that won't be the case. You know, with everything else coming up around it, I think its time could now shortly be coming. And I think in terms of moving the cultural offer outside, you've got Stanley Halls, you've got various other initiatives, but I think it is true that the centre of the town was focused on first.
At South Croydon and Purley and Coulston, I keep hearing those areas, but not much on the other side at all. So just when, you know, does that come into play?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say there has been a whole series of consultations about reinvesting in Thornton Heath. If you give me your details, I'll make sure one of the officers contacts you so you can have your say as well.
And just secondly, we work in events and stuff as well. I know you mentioned Box Park, and that's been great. We've done stuff there, but it's very limited in the sense of, as a business perspective, you can't make any money. And when you go to the other areas of Croydon where you want to do, where there are venues or trying to find venue space, there is none. They're closing down. And again, from today, it seems like the nightlife just seems to be ignored. You talk about bringing young people into Croydon, but then you're sending them back out to Brixton or to Shoreditch or to Hackney to go and enjoy themselves. There's nothing here for them, and there doesn't seem to be any plans of that. Like what's happening around that event space or space in general for things like that to happen.
Again, I'll talk to you outside, get your details, and I'll get people to talk to you about. You may well have ideas about the new 6 million youth zone we're building in Selhurst. You might have views on how that should be. Should there be a section for all of young people in Croydon? I don't know to play music. I don't know. You're the young person. You say, and I'll connect you with the right people to talk to.
I think
Is that okay?
There are a lot of initiatives for events in parks and what have you, and in this period, while Fairfield Halls, etc., isn't there, while there's a lot of redevelopment, there's a lot of initiatives to move things out to.
I'm speaking from experience of doing things in Croydon. For example, there's rules changed a lot. For example, we were doing something when Tag was there, and we thought we could have something come down. A year later, Box Park had them come down to do something. So it's that rules change depending on who's doing things. So I just want to know, is there a level playing field and what is being done about that as a whole in Central Croydon?
Yeah. Well, I think what you should do is talk to Justin just behind you there as well. Rooftop cinema, etc. Sorry.
It's very exciting about all of this development, but I'm really concerned about the environment and transport. And we seem to be, flinging up these buildings everywhere. And it seems like there's also a great need for us to actually invest in our green spaces and open spaces. And I think Croydon Parks are kind of struggling to find money or make parks work for them. So they are to businesses and to encourage people to use green spaces and be a bit more mindful of our environment. So what are all of these businesses that are massively financially benefiting out of moving to Croydon? How can we encourage them to actually invest in this actual environment as well? What's happening there?
Well, I think Croydon, I think, is the second greenest London borough, if not one of the
If you
greenest.
put all the green open spaces in Croydon together, you'd have an area larger than the London borough of Islington.
I know it's physically
It's
green
huge.
and
So it's physically.
large, but there's a lot of sort of neglected spaces, and there's not really much visibility in Croydon that we care about the environment. So, for example, in Hackney, you have orange bins everywhere, which shows you quite obviously that Hackney Council cares about recycling and its environment. And I feel like perhaps Croydon could take a note out of the success of that. And I think we should be a borough, because we are one of the largest greenest physical boroughs, to encourage residents and thousands more new residents to actually take note and be a bit caring about it.
I think it's a valid point. We've got quite a lot going on. There's new BMX tracks going in Norbury, I think it is, isn't it? You've had new cafes open up in Lloyd Park, in one of the ones in Coulston, I'm forgetting the name. So there is quite a lot of focus on that.
Can I just mention, one of our scale-up businesses actually has an idea for putting advertisements about the parks on the hoarding that's around these developments. So we've got companies that are all sort of combating that. Beth's in the room, so perhaps you can talk to Beth in a little while as well. But I think we might have to bring the questions to a close.
I think we're probably nearing the end.
Yep.
There's just a couple of things I wanted to mention. There's the Croydon newspaper, which was in the Croydon Advertiser, which I brought a couple of copies along, which it has some nice sort of plans and the aerial photograph of all the developments, if anybody's interested. I also brought along a few of the Croydon maps, which was one of the slides, which if again anybody interested in that. And there are a couple of membership of Develop Croydon leaflets, if anybody's interested in that as well. So no, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. We have food outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Before they go. Take one more. Keep everyone catching up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're London to drive, principally, but anywhere really.
We're exploring.
Okay, yeah. to from okay, yeah, D1.
No, of course not.
I have to look at that particular policy. I don't think it's something we've got an office intention. It just depends exactly. So it's a simple case of these applications. Are you going to the left? Oh, generally? Yeah, no, yeah. No, I know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you might not like it. We do all the stuff on Fairly Go. So, but I don't think that's a conflict.
No.
Not if you were, yeah.
Yeah, we are.
And we wouldn't. Yeah. Have you got a car? Yeah, you guys are very strong.
Yeah.
Live stream on Channel.
I thought you might bid more on it. We were being trying to do a building in North Street.